So, we have to talk about Stranger Things. It all started in 1983 with a boy named Will Byers and his friends. And then it kind of ended poorly. Stranger Things, I kind of grew up with. I watched the first season when it came out, and then I dropped off. And honestly, a few summers ago, I watched seasons 1 through 4. And I was excited for the ending, season 5. And when it finally came, I was left with disappointment. Not only for the dropped characters and the drop points, but for the characters themselves and what their stories led to. So, lovelies, let's get into the case of Stranger Things. I want to start off this deep dive by prefacing that I liked the series. I liked the show. It's a fun watch, and I liked picking apart all the little details. All the little details that seemingly went to nothing in the end. And honestly, I watched the documentary of the making of the final season, and knowing what I know now, it makes sense of why it felt so jumbled together. It's because they were filming with one, without a finished script, and two, well, in truth, the Duffers, in their own words, said they didn't really want to write. And that in lies the issue I have with the series. There was so much heart and soul poured into this. It was a show for Outcast. And then came the ending, and it basically told the Outcast to go back in the closet. Go back to your weird little spaces and don't bother us here in the light. And the greatest offense of all, I feel, is to Jane. She never represented childhood magic. If you want a character to represent childhood magic, go for it. But maybe don't have that character be abused for her entire childhood. So that is just a thought. Maybe keep that in mind. Because you can't have the duality of this character living through this awful experience and then being like, no, they just represent happy. That doesn't work. That doesn't work not only in the narrative, but it doesn't work as a concept either. You can't have a juxtaposition of that magnitude. And as a writer myself, characters do drop off in the first draft, and that's why you do 2 to 3 drafts. But when you're writing while you're filming, you can't do that very well. And honestly, I was disappointed. Dimitri, Susie, Argyle all got dropped. Where are the Russians? These key characters that you have set up for 2 seasons, for even longer for some of them, are just gone. And yeah, we got the teacher back, but was he really necessary? Or were we just bringing characters back for fan service? What is the point of them being there? Is it just to be there? Then they are serving no purpose and don't need to be in the scene anymore. You could still have a little bit of fan service with them being in the background, or it was great when the teacher was with Erica. It just showed that we still get a little bit of fan service while it's still serving the plot. So let's get into my likes and dislikes of the final season. What did I love about it? So we can start off with Robin and Steve. They still have a great friendship, and honestly, Nancy herself as well. Nancy is realizing that she's not going to be happy with Jonathan, and Jonathan realizes the same thing. They've had this miscommunication for so long, and I love their proposal. Their proposal was great. I have no notes there. that showed so much courage and a breakal of the cycle of between Karen and Ted's marriage of miscommunication and Ted not even knowing his daughter's birthday. I'm seeing a lot of like online right now that people's stance on Ted has shifted from like he just sits around all day to ooh, he threw one golf club at a demigorgon and then got slashed pretty quick. And honestly, I saw that when we're applauding this, we're applauding a mediocre man at his finest. He's done nothing. He's had no character development. Any rational human being, of course, would defend themselves against a monster. He's not special, babes. Karen, I see it different with her fight because she at least is protecting Holly, and it makes sense. In the fight earlier we see with Ted and Karen, they are fighting about Holly, and of course Holly runs off, and Karen in that fight, as little of we see of it, it's clear that she loves Holly more than Ted. At least she knows her birthday. I will always diss Ted Wheeler. If there is no hate for Ted Wheeler, I am dead. But for that, Karen fighting back to that extent makes sense. And of course, there's always adrenaline factor, blah, blah, blah. And then we start to get into weird territory with why didn't Karen survive and not all those soldiers? Yeah, plot holes like that. And of course, sometimes we do have to stick with the rule of cool and kind of just flow with whatever the story is taking us, but you can't really do this with this final season. Of course, I really did love Will's and Robin's interacting with, like, him slowly coming out, but, oh boy. Every character got murked narratively in this season, and we're gonna go over it. I might have to do a part 2, but I'm gonna try to condense it all in because I have so much to say. But oh boy. And I guess I did like the final form of the Mind Flayer. It didn't make quite as much sense as like this cluster of fog, which I thought was like way scarier, way cooler, because how do you fight something that's like fog? We'll get back to that when I like have my sparse little rewrite. Is my rewrite perfect? Absolutely not. I didn't like 3 hours, so. But, and that was 3 hours of like on and off of writing and just thinking of like cool things to do and if I could do this or if I could do that. But of course, that's not the ending we got. So let's get into what I didn't really like. I didn't like how the scene where I thought Flyer was going to happen in the field and Robin is looking at Will and Mike and there's this romantic music kind of swinging through the air. I'm like, oh, they're gonna kiss later. I did not like how that went nowhere. How did we get 4.5 seasons of hints of the lights, of the background, of Elle and Mike fighting each other because they are not a better couple than they are friends. They are so much better as friends because Elle needs time to heal from her time as an experiment and not a human. And of course, I will be doing a huge section on why I don't think Mike and Elle work as a couple. Of course, there's always the fear of Divorcegate, and Blyer was supposed to happen because of the divorce. It just got weird. Honestly, the more I hear about the production of this season, the more I believe Divorcegate. Of course, that's only speculation because his wife was on the writers' team, and then she left midway through the season, and everything crumbled. But you did not hear that from me. And then there's the fact that a lot of the interactions did not make sense, nor did some of the costuming choices. Granted, it was the 80s. They have, every generation and year has this weird fashion thing, which I love to see. Ellen is slick back though. I get it, she's like running around, but like for the entirety of the season, can we have her hair loose, get her, like, I don't know, hair ties breaking, anything, a different vibe. Maybe she's actually resting for a moment this season, like. But with the mischaracterization of the characters in their own show, we also have the fact that so many friendships got dropped. I would have loved to see more Max and Elle, especially when Max wakes up, because again, Max, last time Elle saw her, was in a coma. And when they see each other, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, cool, you're back, sick. That is not how you react when a friend wakes up from a multi-month coma. That's not it either. And speaking of which, Max has no reaction to Hopper being alive because in season 3, he's presumed to be dead, and nobody knows about Hopper being alive until season 4 with Joyce and that whole debacle. It doesn't make sense. And yes, it was a mid-season finale. Season and series finale. It was a show you put on to do something else and not actually sit there and watch it. And even when I was watching it myself, I was crying out of the nostalgia of from the time when I watched it, and of course when I was younger and it first came out. But you can't write off nostalgia alone. You have to have substance to your story. And this leads us to what we got. They were writing too much off of nostalgia and trying to be unexpected. What some people don't understand, especially new writers, old writers, it doesn't matter, but the thing people misunderstand is that if somebody guesses your ending, it's not the end of the world. It just means you've done your job setting things up very cleanly for them. You should have people guess your ending because that's a writer's mark. If you can craft a story where people rewatch it over and over and it finally clicks, you have a story. You have a story that flows. But when you have Reddit open and leave it on your documentary to try to avoid doing whatever ending they come up with, it's tacky. It shows the fact that all this buildup you have done has been for nothing. And that's so disappointing. Because what do you mean I have spent so much of my life? It was in production for 10 whole years. That's so much of our lives. That's a whole decade. And you told us to go back and look at every little thing. And yet when we did that, you laughed in our faces and told us we were dumb. Because apparently, unfortunately, everything is surface level now. And of course, I will be doing a deep dive on what I think about the whole "the door is just blue" thing that's happening. Because the door is never just blue. But that is a story for another time and another video, honestly. But I have issues with so many of the characters. Lucas was just reduced to Max, and Max was pretty much reduced to the cool girl, and I have to talk about it. Because with Max, her waiting that long to run to Lucas does not make sense. She is 10 feet away, at most. I could understand if she saw it, there's always the theory that she thought it was Vecna, but babes. All sense loses your head when you think you have freedom. All sense. I could see a way if she saw it, immediately started running, but it was too far, and just when she was about to reach it, it closed. That would have been beautiful angst for the show. Her scrambling through this cliff to get to Lucas, of course, that is so representative of her struggle with Vecna and being in his mind in a more condensed form. But it was okay. It was okay. And of course, Will being bubbled down and boiled to just the gay character. He's so much more than that. He is an artist, of course. The painting was never brought up. We just kind of saw it in the corner on the last episode. And that's it. It felt badly written. A lot of the dialogue was not egregious, but it was clunky. It was not up to standards of the other seasons. And it's heartbreaking because I love the series. I loved the lighting, the cinematography, the action, the dialogue of these characters. And I love it to the point that I can't sit by and just take this. To love something is to want to dissect each and every little inch of it to better understand it. Even if that piece of media is an absolute train wreck. If you can at least have fun with it, it's okay. But when we get an ending that is a disservice to not only the characters, but the fandom as a whole, it's disheartening to see. It's disappointing because they even said in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the documentary that they didn't want a bad ending, but they wrote a bad ending. They rushed it. And not only the fact they did rush it, they put it on major holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, when already emotions are high from not only being with your family, but just adrenaline, and not adrenaline, but a dopamine flooding through your veins, but you have to see because you can't have spoilers. That was cruel. And you have timelines in the show. You could have done it on November 3rd when Will went missing, or any other important date from the show, just as a slight little homage to the fans. But no, you chose holidays. So as many people would watch it as possible the moment it came out, because nobody wants spoilers. Of course, I have other issues with that, but I'll just leave it there. We have to talk about the elephant in the room. Blair. No matter what you think, Blair was queerbait. The definition is very simple. You set up a queer couple for marketing purposes only. There's little moments where they could potentially be endgame, but you never address it. And it was never addressed. It doesn't matter if that character has come out. If you never either confirm that relationship or end it, it's a disservice to people and it hurts real people. They had a whole season to shut Blair down. They had multiple seasons to shut Blair down if it was not endgame, and they didn't. They didn't until the last possible second. I know. Mike's not friends but best friends is not an end to that. If people can look through your shows where you have said that every little thing matters, and they see signs like the colors, the lighting, the proximity, the look of the actors, because when you're directing something, everything has to be intentional. And we find signs that these two characters could be gay. And then you take that, you don't address their feelings for each other, even if it's just a one-sided and they get rejected. At least that's a conclusion. You take that and give the character a epilogue boyfriend. Congratulations, you suck. You've reduced this boy down. This boy becoming a man down. Hi babies. Hi co-host. Come on, come say hello. Come say hello. Come on, you can say hello. My co-host is back. Come on, you wanna come say hello? There she is. Like a shark. You like a shark, baby doll? Come here. You come here, come say hello. Oh, babies. Come say hello, co-host. She doesn't like this either. I know. But I know. You're so sweet. So sweet. However, if you take that character and just do that to him, you reduce him down to one character trait. And you get rid of the one thing that has carried through 4 seasons already. You have stripped him of being an artist, of being a friend, of loving D&D, and you reduce him down to one single label. You reduce him to being the gay friend. And for a show as big and popular as this one, what message does that send to the people who are struggling? Who saw the show and took it as their comfort show? Who saw Will and Mike and thought, oh, I'm finally gonna be seen. I get representation because representation matters. I once saw a video I think it was in my sociology second soc class about these poor little girls, these poor little black girls who were told what Barbie looked pretty and what Barbie looked ugly. Oh, okay, this really hurts me because they were also like obviously very young. I'm gonna maybe put them around 5 to 10, maybe 7. But they said the white Barbie looked pretty and the black Barbie looked ugly because the white Barbie was seen in all of the shows. Those poor babies. Not to mention I saw another one, I'm pretty sure it was TikTok, but the prompt was run like a girl. And of course they did la la la, la 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 la. Even women did it. And it really shows just how ingrained this stereotype is. And then it cut to shows about women, specifically about SA. And it showed them running for their lives. And this is why representation matters. We cannot have one type of human on screen, because then it isolates everybody else into feeling like they don't have a place. If they are not allowed to see themselves and their people, their skin color, their identity on screen or in books or in art, then what? And the answer is we make our own. But what happens when a show that was supposedly made for us ends in a way that punishes us for thinking like that? Because the only other queer couple in the show broke up off screen. And then you kind of insinuate that it was dysfunctional somehow. Of course it was, but it really wasn't that dysfunctional with Robin and Vicky, but it was only rocky, not toxic, but rocky, because Robin had to keep the fact that, monsters are real, so she didn't sound insane to her girlfriend, but after that, they looked fine together. I wish we saw more Vicky. I could have lived without Mr. Clark. But no. We got just an okay ending. And speaking of the very ending, Dustin's speech doesn't make sense to me either. The town still thinks Eddie, in a satanic thing, murdered Chrissy and a few other kids. And yet they don't jump him as soon as Dustin reveals his Hellfire shirt. And they cheer for him. That doesn't make sense. Unless Eddie is somehow redeemed in the eyes of the town. And I swear, if one of those brothers say it happened off screen. You can have things happen off screen, but it can't be integral to the plot. Or how the characters act, like in Romeo and Juliet, when the wedding happens off screen, because the story as a love story is not about the love. It's about the tragedy. It's about the death. It's about these two characters loving each other, but still being ripped apart because they can never be together. It is simply not their fate. But when you have big moments, like suddenly the town actually knowing the truth about Eddie, it doesn't make sense. Of course, that last scene when Holly and her friends go into the basement and Mike passes that baton, I loved that. Just letting the next generation have their own adventure, that was beautiful. That was great. I really, really liked it. Now, let's talk about the other elephant in the room, Mike and Jane. Mike and Jane. I like them as a concept together, but they simply don't work out, like, at all. Let's take season 1, for example, and kind of go through and I can show you how toxic these two are for each other as romantic partners. They would make beautiful, beautiful friends. They just jumped way too quickly into romance. Mike, for one, has lived with emotionally abusive and absent parents. Ted Wheeler can't get off his couch, and Karen is an alcoholic because of her loveless marriage. She chose this marriage because she wanted stability. But Mike doesn't have a really good example in his life of what happy parents look like, as far as we can tell. Because Will has a loving mom, but his dad sucks and is an alcoholic, which brings me to the point that him being in the bar at the end of the series doesn't make sense. He should have been in an art studio, because when you have an alcoholic family member, it changes you. It changes the way you look at alcohol and drinking in general. But I digress. We never see Dustin's dad, and his mom is just kind of there in the background. Of course, Lucas's parents look okay, but we don't get enough on them to get a good read, other than they look okay as like a couple functioning. Elle was an experiment and very clearly taught just enough to function and not be a vegetable. And we can see this in the way she speaks. She was taught how to speak, but not proper grammar. She wasn't taught the nuance. She wasn't taught that she was allowed to have her own opinion about anything. Of course, there was always the natural human of liking something, but she didn't have a word for it. She's limited. She's just kind of experiencing the world. She's an alien to the real world. And she also has this added issue of this immense power that hurts her when she uses it. Breaking a blood vessel, having the nosebleed is a cool visual, but that's still building pressure in your nose, and no matter, even if it's just like a paper cut, it's still hurting you, and it can be depleted. But oh boy. And then they kiss and then get in a romance, and by season 3, it's spiraling. Before Jay knew her real name, she had a boyfriend. And yes, Elle is technically a name, but it's really not. 11. A number. A number in a system, in a series of experiments. She reclaimed the name, yes, but that's not her real name. That's just something she has to hold on to, because now she has that power. She has the power of her past because she chose not to let it define her. But oh boy. There is so much discourse I'm seeing on this one. The scene where I knew that Mike and Elle were not supposed to make it was when Max and Elle are in the mall, and Elle sees this beautiful and pretty, yes, it's blue, thing on a mannequin. I'm pretty sure it's her shirt, but I couldn't really tell in the scene. And she looks at it, and Max asks if she likes it. And Elle just goes, how do I know if I like it? And of course, Max tells her, and this scene isn't about clothes. On the surface, it is. But you can't really engage with something on the surface level. Of course, you can if you're just more of a casual viewer. But you still have to, even if you're just a casual viewer, you have to understand the implications of things in the show. Like in, let's say, the new movie Frankenstein, when Victor is cutting off the monster's hair, and the monster's just trying to look in the mirror and see himself as he is. The act of Victor not letting the creature have hair, a symbol in human society where it's a very big expression of who you are. Do you like long hair? Do you like short hair? Do you like to put it up? Do you like braids? Do you like barrettes? Do you like ribbons? Do you like to dye your hair? Having that being forcibly taken away, not by your choice, but by somebody else's, that in itself is dehumanization at its finest. Let's take a look back at that mall scene then. We can see here that she really doesn't know how things work outside of being dehumanized, being viewed as something other, something science considers an experiment. How did she know? If she can't even know if she likes the clothes, how did she know she liked Mike? Was she just trying to mirror and get the reassurance that she did a good job from somebody? And it wasn't Mike's fault. It was neither of their faults. It was the adults who failed Elle. They were children at the time, and they didn't really know what they were doing. But, oh boy. Once they break up in season 3 as well, Mike is more annoyed than anything that he's lost Elle, which was always extremely weird to me. You have your girlfriend, and you've broken up, and now you're throwing a tantrum about it. I can guarantee you, he got that from Ted. Not in like a malicious way, just by watching. Humans learn by repetition and mirroring what we see around us. But the contrast of when Will Byers, let's say as a friend to avoid the Blyer issues, it's not really a Blyer versus Maleven. Maleven doesn't work because it's toxic, and Blyer works because, well, it was interesting and the signs were leading there, like, directly. When I watched episode 4, I'm like, hey, this is kissing music. Are they gonna be? Because even the music choice affects the story. And it does. But when Will, let's say as a friend, gets upset at Mike for not playing D&D and kind of leaving him behind for a girl, Mike goes to this kid's house in the rain and begs and cries on the door. So let's dissect this a little bit. Begging and crying on your friend's door versus being annoyed that your girlfriends dumped you. Do you see what I'm getting at? Do you see how strange that is? Maleven, if they were going in that direction, could have worked. And then season 4 comes, and it's either going to be fixed or it's going to fail. From Mike. That is Jane's issue with Mike. It's always from Mike, but never love Mike. He never says it. He only kisses her. Kissing does not solve the issue. You can make out with someone. You can make out with a man you hate. And that doesn't solve the miscommunication issue. You have to not only say, I love you. If you can't say it, you're not in love, babes. I can say I love you to my best friends because I genuinely love them in the platonic sense. being able to say I love you after multiple years together, mind you, makes sense. It's normal, but he can't even say it, and he still can't say it up until the credits roll of the series. And we even see that he doesn't really keep her letters either. But he will keep Will's, all the little doodles he does, everything he sends him. Mind you, I do the same thing. I keep all of the little doodles my friends have ever given me throughout the years, as long as I don't lose them or accidentally toss them. But I try to keep a record because I love them. I respect my friends because they are my friends. They are a part of me. But throwing away your partner's letters to you? Babe! Mike, do you actually love her? Or did you just want to fulfill the status quo of what society told you was the next step? And then season 5. Then they barely talk. And his hero worship doesn't really stop. In the talk, she says it's not one of their campaigns. Yeah. And then they don't really discuss anything else. And by the time in that final void scene, which we don't even know is real, it could be a schizophrenic episode, which I don't like that. I don't like that angle. It doesn't make sense. Elle says that he saw her as she was, and then immediately cuts to a scene where she is in a disguise. Scene choice matters. Scene choice matters so much. She has never trusted Mike, and we can see that. Well, trust, she's never fully trusted. She can trust Mike, just not to the extent she needs. In season 4 at the roller skating rink, when Angela starts to bully Jane again, instead of confessing everything to Mike, which I get, you don't want your loved ones to know you're in pain, but at some point it is necessary to get you the help you need. Instead of going to Mike, she goes to Angela to beg her to stop being a bully and to just keep up the lie. If you've been dating someone for multiple years and you react like that, it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. Point blank, it's not healthy. Because what do you mean that you couldn't even say that you were struggling? If it takes you 10 minutes to confess all your worries to a stranger on the street, outside of a restaurant, because hey, the line is long and hey, you're great, you are now my best friend. If you can't do that with your partner, I would rethink the relationship. You can still be friends, but it might be time to find a new hobby, babes. It's not a good look. And it could work if they, let's say, took a break for a little bit. Let Jane find herself, because not every woman in a show or a movie or a book has to end up with a man or get married or whatever. She can just be by herself, living her dreams, opening a small bookstore, and just kind of vibing with herself. What is so wrong with that? Yes, romance is fun to read, it's fun to watch. But sometimes that's not what the story calls for. Sometimes we have to forgo that to let the character who was abused have time to actually live with herself and figure things out, because it doesn't just take kissing a boy you met 5 days ago in the woods to deal with all that psychological damage. It takes years and a really good therapist. And kissing is not therapy. It's a band-aid over a bullet hole, and eventually that bullet hole will soak through the band-aid and make that band-aid fall off, like it does for Ted and Karen. And we can see parallels in between Nancy and Jonathan. Oh boy. Nancy and Jonathan, they make really good friends. Just friends. How Steve and Robin make good friends. How Nancy and Steve make really good friends. Nancy and Jonathan are trying to force something that isn't working. Jonathan himself says that he thinks the proposal will fix everything. And he realizes it won't. Jonathan has been in Nancy's room and he's seen how much she has loved the color pink, and she's loving being a girly girl and also being a walk 'em down wheeler. We love a multi-purpose queen. But Jonathan threw away one of her favorite sweaters. Rip bubblegum wheeler, you will be missed. And of course, Nancy kind of does the same thing with his weed, and they don't really like each other's vices, and she doesn't like his music, and he doesn't really like when she goes off her little rants, and they just don't work as a couple. And it's nice to see that being noticed. And we can see this personified on screen with the melting room. Everything's melting, everything is falling apart. And well, it only solidifies, it only strengthens, it only has a good foundation once they realize that they don't want to get married, they don't want to stay in a relationship, and they are better friends. And seeing that, and seeing Nancy being alone is actually so sweet to see. It's sweet because she gets to have her own agency. She gets to have her own story. I mean, it's nice seeing a girl boss getting married, but sometimes the girl boss doesn't want to get married, and that's okay. That's okay. And then we have couples like Joyce and Hopper. Hopper might be a little gruff around the edges, but he still works with Joyce because he loves her wholly. When she was having her fits throughout the season with the lights, the magnets, he listened to her. He sat and listened, unlike Jonathan and unlike Mike. He doesn't care what force she uses, unlike Mike, who, when he was having Elle help him with his bullies, he cheered her, but the moment she turned her powers against her own bullies, he really rejected her for that. It just doesn't make sense, honestly, and oh boy, it's rough. And the Duffers saying that if Elle didn't sacrifice herself, she would have gotten married to Mike. And honestly, I can see trends. And they kind of would have ended up like Karen and Ted if they didn't fix their issues. So, between the drop characters, the weird plot points, it just kind of fell apart. And the fact that the final boss battle was in a desert, even Even though it's established the Mind Flayer does not like heat and prefers cold. They prefer cold there, babes. And whatever demo fatigue was, like, he saw into multiple people's brains who were there when the plan was conceived. He should have known. And besides, even if he didn't, the right side up, the abyss, is where they live. Let's just get into the rewrite. As I've said before, is this perfect? No, it is not. Because you need time and multiple writers for a show. So let's bring back the Pride and Prejudice book and see what I could come up with in 3 hours with what I was given. The rules of this short rewrite is I cannot change how any characters look. I can drop characters. Mr. Clark is being dropped because I do not know why he was there. Okay, it does not make sense. Other than that one scene when he was in class with Erica, which that scene we are keeping because I did like it. It was a nice throwback. We get a little bit of fan service, but not him being there. His role is going to be replaced by Susie because I love her. And also, I kind of wish we saw what happened with Argyle and his sister. Or maybe Jonathan and Argyle. Speculations. We're leaving that to speculations, and we can't change much of anything. Just kind of plugging in what works and getting rid of what doesn't. So we still open with the squawk and the rules. And instead of the US government and Dr. K, we're going to replace that with secret Russians in the military. Because then it makes a little bit more sense of why the military just up and left, even though they're probably millions of dollars of experiments were just blown up, and they're like, oh, okay, bye. That does not make sense for the military. Okay. And as soon as Robin says, and make sure to follow the rules, we're immediately gonna cut to Dustin getting shoved against a locker by the bullies. And the Hellfire shirt being ripped. But when the party comes, they're more worried about him than actively kind of being disrespectful. Because in that show, the one part where they're all sitting at lunch and they're being like, ugh, Dustin really needs to stop. That was a little too condescending for me. And I'm going to say they still are keeping the fact, and their campaign is not mainly about how Hellfire is alive and well, but how Eddie was innocent. Then it makes a little bit more sense. Just a little, but ugh. And then, of course, the breakfast scene where Ted doesn't get the bacon. He's like, why are they here? They should just leave. And Karen's like, shut up. Because that also makes sense later with her attacking the demo. Of course, they plan for the crawl. When Dustin gets jumped, they're more worried, and instead of trying to figure out themselves, they call up Susie. And then they get that to work, and that kind of plays out how it does. Of course, Hopper gets stuck on the upside down, and I really like the Holly, the heroic thing, so I'm still having that. Mike notices Holly and Mr. Whatsit, and of course she goes missing in episode 2. We can keep that so we can keep the Karen scene, but I'm going to kill off Karen in this. And as Holly is fighting for her life, we cut to slices of Ted doing golf or whatever he's doing, and Karen writing a letter to Nancy, and she's like, Nancy, I need you to promise me one thing. I need you to promise me that I'll be back. I apologize for the interruption. My sister is cooking. But Karen is writing this letter to Nancy, be like, hey, I need you to pick your own path. Don't do just what the next step is supposed to be. And that also leads into like the proposal. Of course, we don't see the full contents of this letter. We just see Dear Nancy, blah, 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 interspersing between Holly running away and Ted doing golf. And then we see Love Mom. And then Karen goes, takes a bath. And then, of course, we see Holly dropping and running away from the demo. And of course, we get that scene. And Karen does injure the demo. And Nancy and Elle get to their house. And Karen kind of just weakly smiles at her daughter and points to the drawer where she has the note. And Nancy kind of looks at it and goes, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. And Karen just kind of goes and lets her head rolls back, and then that's the end of her, which I feel like we could have used more angst, so we're doing that. And then it's really angsty. I love that. Ted though, I'm gonna keep alive, I think. Just for the added drama of like Ted. Even though I hate Ted, I feel like there could be some potential for a little bit more spite. So, beware. Ted is gonna go to be the one in the hospital. I'm gonna reverse back a few steps before Karen attacks the demo. She sees Ted basically kind of swing at the demo weakly and be like, And she's like, what are you doing? And then she's gonna go like full adrenaline, full like mother bear mode, and just and that gives her the strength to wound the demo, because she's like, I'm so done with this, because it just really doesn't make sense. Like, these demos have been like lit up, and they're kind of fine. So I just need some continuity there. Of course, Ted doesn't make it all the way, but that's just so the Wheelers can get into the hospital without being like there for no reason. Let us see. And then Erica goes missing. We don't see her go missing, but we see Lucas being worried about it. He's obviously distressed. And of course, when the party asks, he's like, Erica's missing. I haven't seen her in like 3 days. Nobody's seen her. None of her friends have seen her. I've tried going over to Derek's house and she's not there. I'm worried. Because I feel like we need to utilize Erica more in this. Let's see. And then comes in like the Henry dreamscape thing. We get splices between Holly and Henry having a lot of fun, manipulating. And Erica and Max kind of being like fatties together, because I feel like we should see those two together. 2 queens combining their slay. Whew. Let's see. Derek in this season, I'm gonna say, has looked up to Steve. He has, with his sister being friends with her, he has gone to these basketball games, and he has idolized Steve Harrington as like the cool town celebrity figure. They utilize this to get Derek, because of course Max and Erica lure Holly into the woods, and that plot device is still happening. So we can let them know that Derek is the next target with Will, and blah, 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 blah. After, like, Will taps in the hive mind. But Steve kind of uses his cool celebrity to get closer to Derek, because I need more Steve and Derek interactions, because they were so cute together. It was like Steve at his like finest as me mom, like, come on. But I just need more interacting between those two. And then, well, at the hospital, to pull Vicky in way sooner than what she was, Will is gonna have a hive mind attack at the hospital, and Vicky's not gonna know what to do, and like she's gonna be let on the secret, because the guy was floating and convulsing, and it didn't look like any medical thing. And then she can help with that, and then we kind of have like a smaller cast to work with. And of course, we're gonna have a few more Malevolent fights, and it's, I'm gonna say it's gonna be about Elle's powers being shaky, because I did like in season 4 when she had no powers, but in season 5, I'm gonna say because she is still not fully herself, she's still relying too heavily on a man, and she doesn't have the time to, she's never had the time actually to get to know herself. We can see this still in her speech, how it's not fully articulated and grammatical use is always used. We can show that in how her powers are. She has her powers back, but now they sometimes flicker, and that's causing issues. And the more Mike is not fully abrasive, but annoyed at it, she realizes that this isn't for her, because they are not staying together. For Jane to actually have what she needs, they cannot be together. And of course, when the Murray is still there to like bring in supplies and smuggle things, but when the kids go missing after mid-season, Murray's gonna die. I know, I'm sad too. I did not like writing that, but it makes sense. Also, angst. And we're gonna get a scene of the truck tipped over on its side, and just Murray's hand is kind of like laying out of the window and the door. And then there's some more crying options. However, of course, we're still gonna have like the kids escaping, blah blah blah. We're gonna stop that tunnel and the field scene. But Derek is not gonna be taken quite yet. And we're gonna get rid of Callie because she was only there to convince Elle to like commit suicide. And that's not a great look. So, as much as I kind of was vibing with her character in season 3, she doesn't need to be here. So, instead of like blockage, Elle is just gonna have like a space limit on her powers. Let's say she can only work in the Upside Down because it's still technically really close to Hawkins, but she can't look into the Abyss because it's technically really far, even though there's just a wrinkle in time between them. And that she can only release Sense-Machina when he comes down to the Upside Down, but he hasn't done that in such a long time because he's been hiding away. He's been working with the more foggy version of the Mind Flayer, and the Abyss isn't a desert, it's a snowy landscape, except the rocks are white and the snow is red, because I love that visual. I love that visual. And it just makes more sense with like the whole heat aversion. Yeah. Mike tries to continue the relationship, and finally Elle's like, I'm done, Mike. We are not good for each other. We are different people than when we met. I still love you. You are one of my best friends, but for us to be the truest versions of ourselves, we have to break up. And then that can go either one of two ways. It can be, hey, they get together later on after a few years, after like they find themselves, or Blair happens. I could go either way. I'm down for whatever. And Jane, it's important that she says no after a talk with Joyce, because I need more Jane and Joyce conversations. And I think the conversation that happens is Joyce is like, yeah, I kind of hated my husband. My husband was not good. He was an alcoholic. He treated me and my kids horribly. And Jane is like, oh, I don't want that either. So we're just gonna see if this works, and if not, well, I'm done. Which, it makes more sense. So, leaving that conversation, Ella's going to abscond into the Upside Down to go find Hopper. This causes a panic because she kind of tells no one. Because I like that drama. And of course, Hopper and Elle interacting, and they can still have their cute moments in the Upside Down. And of course, we see more of Vecna messing with Will, and the visions he is showing Mike of, like, everybody kind of hating Mike about being queer and all that. And then when he comes out, he just means it to be the party, but Mike is like, oh, I thought this was, like, important information about Vecna. Sorry. Of course, it's like he's too late, so he just does it. And it still feels uncomfortable, but it's meant to feel uncomfortable. And then Mike goes to Will and is like, I am so sorry. I did not mean, I'm so sorry. But instead of coming out to a random guy and his teacher, it's a little bit better. It's still not the best, but it's better. And of course, everybody's still super accepting of Will. And Will is like, yeah, we probably should have been more specific, but emotions were high. But, yeah. And then I'm gonna have Robin catch Mike on this. And not fully come out, but be like, hey, kind of just fishing for information. Oh. And depending on that, we'd either have Liar or be like, hey, I love you like you are my best friend. I don't feel the same way. I will fight for you for the end. You are my sorcerer, but I just don't see you as a romantic partner. And then we have closure. Or we have Liar, which is still closure and not queer baiting. And then, once we get Max back, awake, instead of Karen randomly coming down and be like, I need to go down and blow up this washing machine because my mother senses are tingling. No, we're going to have Vicky do it because she's also gets to have cool moments. And we're also going to have Vicky and Robin stay together. And not just be a plot device for a gay character. Boo sexism. We're going to have Vicky blow up the demos, kind of like getting really into it, and then we kind of cut to the melty room, of course, with the unproposal, and Eddie's back. And I want him back so the town can get a better view of him, so we can still have Dustin's ending speech. Eddie was under the Mind Flayer's control as this hive mind. He was kind of like the general of bats in the abyss, kind of like watching over the tree, which the tree, and at some point Derek can get taken, and instead of like the tree thing, it's more like a clock face, and there was something happen. We can keep the whole he found the rock. I'm not going to play because genuinely, if you have something most of your audience can afford, kinda irks me. And let's say Henry had a really bad childhood, he was neglected, and he wants to go back in time to have a better childhood. Of course, then we can have to deal with the Mind Flayer, and the Mind Flayer needs these kids to kind of get back to full strength. It's old, it's dying, it's ancient. It needs these kids to suck out the youth from them and blah, blah, blah. But it's also missed, so the core of the clock face, instead of like upright, the kids are also back, kind of like laying on the ground, or maybe slightly elevated, because that's cool. But I did like the tree in the original ending. So it kind of is like its heart, or it's where its chest is, just to keep that cool image of like Elle just raping open the chest cavity. But Eddie kind of was in there, but once Will awakens his power mid-season, he is able to break away and kind of flees. Of course, there's still visions and like impulses that he can't control, but he's there again. Blah blah blah. Okay, and then we have everybody back, and there's a big moment between Shane, Max, and Hopper, and be like, oh wow, you are actually alive. After, of course, they come back, because Hopper and Elle, I'm not gonna kill off. One, because Elle needs a happy life and can't be isolated. She can't fix the party by leaving. No, that is bad writing. That is awful to a child, by the way. And Hopper, I want the Hopper proposal, because that was really cute. So Mind Flare, and of course there's Demogorgons, Demi-Dogs, Demi-Bats all around. Eddie, I'm gonna have, he still has like minimal control over the bats, and he's trying to like keep them away and kind of like flying to distract them, as Elle is going after Henry, just kind of keep the victims beating up their abusers, which I love to see. And we're also gonna have Will fighting the Mind Flare in more of a mind fight, as he's like struggling with each thing of the hive mind that is hurt. He can feel it deeply in his bones, and I just like that. Gina's but because like these two opposing sides are both being like harmed by the other players in the game, and it's just awful. And then the party, I'm gonna have fighting the demos and like the Demi-Dogs and kind of those kind of like fun tricks. And then the older kids, Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, and of course we're gonna have Steve and Jonathan friendship, because honestly we love to see it. We're still gonna have Steve almost fall off the tower and Jonathan catch him, be like, hey, I'm so sorry, I don't know what I was doing fighting you for Nancy, even though you guys are just friends, like kisses. Mwah. But they're fighting, they're just kind of helping with the demos and the Mind Flare itself. Nancy's going to lose an arm, because I need more angst, and there's been an issue with everything. Dimitri, once they like really get into like the secret Russian aspect of it, is going to die just for dramatics. And he was fun, and honestly there's something so tragic about a character escaping and then immediately getting murked. And also they said this was going to be a bloodbath, so I'm making it a bloodbath. Vicky and Robin are kind of teaming up together, and kind of that happens. Will, it can go a few ways. We're still gonna have Joyce decapitate Vecna, just because I really like the image of a mother taking revenge for her son who could now just rest, which is really nice and sweet. And like not even her son but her daughter too, like oh Okay, so let me see where I was at. I have so many notes. Okay. After the hive mind goes down, Will's either going to be murked, or he's going to get a nice little scar around his neck and be disabled, and probably be put in a wheelchair or a cane, because there has to be some consequences. He was tied to these hive mind, and we have seen him in so much pain, and I think killing the hive mind should have some effect. Okay, so we have Will being disabled. We're also gonna kill off Eddie, just because he's been remade into this like demo bat general, and he's too ingrained into the hive mind to be alive. Because then we can bring back his body to Hawkins and be like, hey, look at what the Russians are doing. They were committing experiments and blah blah blah. And they're like, oh yeah, wait, no, this makes sense. This makes sense. Because then we have that nice tie-up, and when Justin does his speech, that fits in extremely well. And that also gives us leave to have the American government kind of push them out and be like, hey, you keep quiet, we keep quiet, chill, great. And then that happens. And then Dimitri dies somewhere in there. We get that, and then that's where it ends, and it ends with graduation with Elle this time, kind of just in the crowd. Nancy is there for her siblings. Yep, it's great. And then we have the ending scene where Robin, Vicky, Jonathan, and Steve are kind of like vibing with each other on that roof, and of course Steve is still the coach with Derek, and that makes sense too. But we also have a really good parallel with Derek. They both wanted a happier childhood, and they were kind of being rude for it. Henry just took it a step further and committed atrocities, while Derek was actually given the opportunity to grow and have community, another big theme for the show, and that kind of turned him into a good person, but it still keeps with like Holly Smith, like, we need dipshit Derek back. And it works so well. Is there plot holes? Oh, absolutely. This is just a rough outline. But hey, at least it makes better sense. I super believe in Divorce Gate because so much buildup and for what? It hurts. But yeah, let's talk about my other issues as well. Because I have an issue with the lighting this season, and I need to talk about it. The lighting in past seasons have been great, and this also kind of ties in with my rewrite. We could have gotten funner lighting. Like, I know funner is not a word, but hey, the whole English language and all languages are made up, so like, and also it's been a long day, but I digress. If we had some fun lighting when Elle is fighting Henry, like, let's say she has a nice soft blue light, kind of be like, I'm done with your stuff, versus Vecna's red harsh lighting on him being like an anger, or even switched, where she is fighting with this ferocity and it's leaking out into the lights, versus him not really taking it seriously and having this like ice cold blue, I think would be great. Although with the red snow, well, they're inside the chest still, so with like this foggy kind of, not like the mind space, more just like fog, it still works so much cool. Like, oh, I need that. But yeah, it was just kind of watching a train wreck, unfortunately. I wish it was better. And then for the ending, we don't get everything. We get the party having one last D&D session together, and it's Dustin building technology, Lou, Max kind of just being happy together and just kind of vibing with each other, and of course them pursuing their, Lucas is doing more stuff with like athletics training maybe or something, and Max is getting really into video game development, let's say, and or something with skating related, and then Will is in an art studio, and of course the painting's brought up when the confession happens, and it just works better and tries in those nice little things. Elle is seen, let's just keep it in Greenland or Iceland. She's just vibing, she's exploring the world, and let's not use AI waterfalls, because what do you mean you had a $400 million budget and you used AI slop? And when you watch the documentary, you can see the AI, and it's not the AI, but the extra stuff they have, like the director's chair. Do they auction those for like a charity event, or do they just throw them away? Somebody please answer if you know, because I'm genuinely asking. Like, what do you do with those? Can't you just have like a generic director's chair and be like, hey, yeah, just have a list of like reusable materials? Why do we need that? Nobody needs that. I can see if you're like auctioning it off for like a charity event, but like, come on, babes, come on. And the use of AI is just genuinely awful. You can't do that. No, you have an artist, you can have paid artists, you can use screenshots of your own show. Anything, please. All the love that went into the documentary, and you throw a pie in their faces with AI. Thank you so much for that, by the way. Like, I did like their practical effects, so that's always fun to see, but like, AI, no! I digress. I digress. Whew, boy. Who and boy. Of course, there's so much more to say about how creepy the Duffers were during production, but I don't know enough about it, so I won't speak on that. But from what little of rumors I've heard, and them clearly casting Elle just to sacrifice herself, even from the beginning, it's icky to me, honestly. And hearing them that they never really wanted to write, it's a disservice to the craft of writing itself. Will could have been a writer not looking like his father. Where was the kid who wanted a orange mohawk? Please bring him back. I feel like Mike would have made a great comic book, working with Will to create these wonderful stories about anything. A girl with powers, the sleepy town in the middle of nowhere. But no. We kind of just got a rushed project. And it's really unfortunate to see. Of course, I'm always open to discussion, so leave your theories, your opinions in the comments. All I ask is you do just be respectful. Don't insult someone just because they like Blyer or 11 or your favorite character isn't present, or you just didn't like my rewrite. But just be respectful, and we can honestly have a really great conversation like adults. So that's it for this week, lovelies. Thank you so much for being here with me, and you have a great day. Go get some water, go get a snack, and I love ya. All right, bye-bye now. Mwah.